Good morning. This is Jeff here at the National Weather Service office in Wakefield. Today is September 18th. This is the briefing that will cover the weather going through this weekend and into early next week. Before we get started, I thought we would take a chance maybe here to talk a little bit about what happened on Tuesday, kind of a little bit of a recap of our coastal storm. So what I'll do is pull up some of the past radar and weather information from that event. And what you see here is the coastal low. This was actually Tuesday morning. You can see the area low pressure that was spinning here due east of really about Kitty Hawk or Nags Head, North Carolina. Did have some thunderstorm activity around it. It was one of these subtropical system. We were starting to see some decent squalls moving into parts of Hampton Roads and the lower parts of Eastern Shore and starting to move into parts of the lower peninsulas here. That was in the morning, early morning. By about mid-morning, the low pressure system, instead of kind of tracking right here, maybe across parts of Elizabeth City and coming at the North Carolina Virginia border, it actually paralleled the coast for a little while. Came a little bit further north, continued to kind of increase those winds here across a lot of our region as this thing was spinning. You notice how the folks over northeast North Carolina were just, they just weren't seeing the rain because it had shifted a little bit further north, but that rain was really coming in from the border north. And it would continue to do so for quite some time. By the time we push into early afternoon, again, you see this thing that was spinning starting to move more a little bit towards Cape Charles. Still have some squalls moving in here. And again, northeast North Carolina has no rain. That rain is really, just to the west and north of the low pressure system, which is pretty typical for our mid-Atlantic type of system. So that's why northeast North Carolina really didn't get in on the rain, but everybody north of them really did. It was just because that the subtropical system kind of came a little bit further to the north and kind of came in towards the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay. And by the time we got a little bit later into the evening, early evening, you can kind of see this area of low pressure spinning here coming right near Cape Charles. And it would continue to move inland and continue to weaken, become kind of a broad area of low pressure that would park itself over central Virginia and eventually would come back to the east as a broad area of low pressure, which is why yesterday was so dreary and misty. And now the area of low pressure is well offshore. So I'll be able to show you that here in a second. So this was our wind map from the subtropical system. And you can kind of see here, everybody pretty much had wind gusts anywhere from 40 to 50 miles per hour, maybe a few gusts about 55 to even up to 60 here at Cape Henry. But for the most part, everybody was about 45 to upwards of 50 miles per hour. And that's kind of what was expected. Even down here in North Carolina, even though the low pressure stages to their north and east, they still had wind gusts of 35 to 45 miles per hour, especially as you got, over parts of Currituck, more towards Elizabeth City. And there were also some gusts even to 50 over the Outer Banks as you push further south. So very windy day. The winds extended all the way up, most of the Chesapeake Bay to the Middle Peninsula. Even most of the Eastern Shore got into 45 to 50 mile per hour winds. Ocean City, even here, kind of getting up to about 44 miles an hour, and Salisbury at 35. So definitely a breezy day, kind of what was expected with this area of low pressure. Just took a long time to basically move its way inland, stall out, and eventually come back to the coast and move offshore today. Looking at the rainfall totals, this was our 2-day rainfall total, and so that's why you're seeing some pretty high amounts here, especially in Virginia Beach. And so upwards of 7 to 8 inches, but that was really limited to kind of the ocean front and maybe parts of Virginia Beach here that saw the highest rainfall totals. Once you got west of there, it pretty much averaged closer to 4 to 5 inches, depending on where you were, and then other had maybe 2 to 3 inches. And you notice that 2 to 3 inches, even upwards of 4 to 5 inches of rain, even extended up the eastern shore. And got not quite to Ocean City, but it did get up to Wallops at over 5 inches of rain up there. And then as that low pressure system, slowly moved its way inland and pushed towards Richmond, you can kind of tell it took some of the better precipitation totals with it. And we still saw, anywhere from 1 to about almost 2.5 inches of rain across portions of central Virginia. But again, our friends down here in northeast North Carolina, with the low pressure system staying just off the coast and then coming in the Chesapeake Bay and then moving west, y'all just got robbed. Y'all didn't get any of the heavy rainfall. And it just kind of stayed just to your North Carolina, Virginia border north is really where we saw the better rainfall. And that all had to do with the track of the system. As the system went north, it took the rainfall with it. So jumping into the weather for today, what we'll do is we'll just kind of jump right into with what's happening out there. This is the satellite loop from this morning. And what you notice here is there is still kind of this broad area of low pressure well offshore. And because of that, we have some northwest flow, and we're still seeing some decent cloud cover, really only over the far eastern third of Virginia, all of eastern Carolina, and of course, a lot of eastern shore is seeing a lot of cloud cover. Now, you do notice up here in parts of the Maryland eastern shore and even getting down into Wallops, looks like you're seeing some thinning of the clouds and a bit more sunshine, where the rest of the peninsula's Hampton Roads is a little bit more socked in. I was looking at the radar and the observations, and we're not really seeing much drizzle anymore. So the cloud decks are getting higher. They're raising up. The clouds may be thinning a little bit. It does look like that back edge is starting to kind of move a little bit from north to south. So things should improve through the day, especially over eastern Virginia. It may take a while. I mean, things will be better tonight, and especially for tomorrow, things will be quite a bit better with less cloud cover. So what's going on is we have the front that continues to push offshore. As that low moves offshore, it continues to move northeast. Things will continue to dry out. We will have another front that will try to come down through here later in the week, and you'll kind of notice it's going to go, come across the area. A high pressure is going to move across the Great Lakes, come in over here off of New England and parts of Boston, and that high pressure is going to ridge, to the southeast. And so we call this cold air damming, as this high pressure ridge kind of locks in across the area. And this is really going to be more later on Saturday, especially on Sunday and Monday. And so that's going to increase the wind, probably going to bring more cloud cover. It's going to increase maybe the potential for rip currents, to bring back small craft advisory conditions. So the later part of the weekend and early next week, while it's not going to be real rainy, it could definitely be a little bit messier and just maybe a little more dreary and breezy. So we'll see how that plays out. And then as you get into Tuesday, this doesn't quite go out that far. So I'll show you. Here's Monday, and you have that high pressure, way up over Nova Scotia and parts of Maine. High pressures, kind of building south down across the Mid-Atlantic, and you have the stalled front. But by Tuesday morning, a wave of low pressure may try to develop along that front. Won't bring us any real significant weather, but it might allow those northeast winds to increase here a little bit, and maybe bring us some more small craft advisory conditions, maybe some light rain, but nothing like we just saw. But just be aware that there may be another little weak coastal low that tries to form along that front as it sits over the Gulf Stream later in the week. So we'll see what happens next week. Bottom line is, second half of the weekend's probably not going to be as nice as the first half of the weekend. Dry today all the way through Saturday night. Not expecting any precipitation really. And then for Sunday, through I'd say about Tuesday, Wednesday, there could be a little bit of light rain. That we're not looking at a washout. Maybe more drizzly like mist. Maybe a little occasional light rain with that northeast flow. So you're not seeing a lot of high rainfall totals here by any means, but it could be a little more dreary, and that's why you're seeing maybe just kind of a widespread light rainfall falling, anywhere from Sunday through Wednesday night. This is our daily forecast across the region. So, today, because of the cloud cover, we're kind of holding temperatures down in the 70s for the most part. Maybe a few people with more sunshine do get into the low 80s. So maybe a little more low 80s out in the western parts of the area, where towards the coast with the cloud cover going to stay more in the 70s. But tomorrow, everybody should break out, and you see a lot of temperatures here in the mid to upper 80s. So almost like a summertime kind of a day. But then look at that Saturday and Sunday cool off again, especially on Sunday. So that cold front's going to try to sneak through here later in the day on Saturday, and so that's going to keep the temperatures a little cooler. And then on Sunday, with that cold air damming in place, a ridge of high pressure building down the east coast from the north, that should keep the temperatures down, maybe a little bit more cloud cover, and that continues into Sunday. And we'll see what happens Monday and Tuesday. Looking at the chances of rain, you do see some very slight chances. You could see a little bit of light rain there on Sunday, and then maybe a little bit getting into next week. But you're only seeing, 15 to 20% chances of precipitation. So no big heavy precipitation, but there could be some of that light drizzle, mist, maybe some pockets of light rain, but right now, not any really high chances of rain at the moment. So moving out into the tropics, we do have Gabrielle out there as a tropical storm. There's good confidence that it will strengthen to a hurricane by Monday morning, but it also looks like it's going to recurve the way the weather pattern is set up across the east coast and moving out into the western Atlantic. It should deflect this system and keep it well offshore, maybe even east of Bermuda. So Gabrielle does not appear to be a threat to us here on the mid-Atlantic. Looking at the just 7-day tropical outlook, where we might see additional formation. There's only a low chance of the system coming off of Africa here developing They're keeping an eye on this. It's slightly favorable out there, but right now it's only a low chance of the system developing that's just to the east of Gabrielle. Looking out further than that, this is hopefully good news for us as we get through the end of September and into early October. It does look like, the conditions are going to stay kind of, it's not a zero probability of tropical development, but at least it's on the lower end. And so there's at least a low probability that there could be some tropical development out there. But the good news is we're not seeing any kind of moderate to high potential. So we'll be keeping an eye on it. And right now it looks like conditions, out. Now, because of the northeast and east flow that's been going on, and now today, the winds have died down, but we have residual waves along the coast. We do have a moderate threat of rip currents because of all the wind we saw earlier. The surf is coming down, and I think conditions will be much improved as the day goes on. But we do have that moderate threat for today. But then for Friday and Saturday, we have a low risk of rip currents, so conditions should remain pretty calm along the beaches. Now for Sunday, remember those northeast winds increase on Sunday. It persists a little bit into Monday, so I would expect the beaches are going to get quite a bit rougher, especially as you push into Sunday and Monday. Now, the tidal flooding has pretty much ramped down for all of us, which is good news. We are seeing maybe some spotty, I'd say call it nuisance tidal flooding, where the tides are elevated, and maybe we're still seeing a little bit of water on some of those low-lying roads, but the tides really have come down quite a bit. Now, what we're going to have to watch out with that northeast wind picking up, for Sunday and maybe into Monday, we might see a return to some minor tidal flooding. And I'll throw the forecast up here for Sewell's Point, so you can kind of see how the tides remain elevated here for the next several tide cycles. 4 feet is really the minor flooding threshold for Sewell's Point, and you can kind of see right here by the time you get into Monday morning, and then again a little bit later Monday evening, and then probably even into Tuesday, we'll be right at minor flood levels. So with no, but we may see the water coming back up, maybe about another half foot or more in a lot of our tidal areas. And this will probably be, I'd say, pretty widespread across most of our tidal rivers and across a lot of the bay with that northeast wind. So maybe some minor tidal flooding returning for early next week. Looking ahead further than that, going out into the 8 to 14-day outlook, looks like we might return into maybe some above normal temperatures here as you look out 2 weeks from now. And precipitation is probably going to remain right around normal as we move out to the next 2 weeks. So nothing too dramatic there, but we might see some warmer temperatures starting to come back as we look further out in time. Now, shifting gears into the marine side of the house, things are much quieter. You're not seeing a lot of colors on the map for today or tomorrow. In fact, tomorrow looks like it'll be really calm. By the time you get into Saturday, maybe we start seeing some winds of about 15 knots, maybe a few gusts to 20 knots. But then by the time you get into Sunday, you see more orange on the map. So that's our small craft advisory conditions. So we do expect a lot of small craft advisory conditions widespread across the area with that northeast wind at about 20 to 25 knots on Sunday. And that does bleed into Monday a little bit, where I think in the lower bay, you're still going to be 15 to 20 knots and maybe 20 to 25 knots out here in parts of the coastal waters. So small craft advisory conditions are going to return, but it's nice today. Tomorrow, Saturday. So here's your wind forecast over the next several days. Through Sunday morning, might see some northeast winds picking up Saturday. That's what you see here on the left, getting up to maybe about 17 to 20 knots. But then if you look over here on Sunday, those northeast and east winds really increased to about 20 to 25 knots. And so, today's pretty quiet. Friday's pretty quiet. Those east winds pick up as we get through the day on Saturday, and they bump up even a little bit more on Sunday. So comparing the sustained wind to the wind gust, again, quiet the next couple of days. But then over the weekend, as we push through Saturday afternoon, that northeast wind picks up 15, 20 knots. Going to get a little bit bumpy out there. And then by Sunday afternoon, we're at 20 to 25 knots out of the northeast. So some solid small craft advisory conditions out there at that point. Bleeds a little bit into Monday, but then Monday, the winds do decrease, though they do stay northeast at about 15 knots on Monday. And then we'll see what happens Tuesday and Wednesday. It looks like winds may become a little more southeast and remaining around 10 knots or so. So first part of the weekend looks somewhat okay, getting rougher through the day Saturday, but then Sunday looks like it's going to be windy out there on the waters, especially for our recreational boaters. With looking at the wave height, pretty low waves today, only about maybe 2 to 3 feet, only about maybe a foot or less, probably on the rivers and parts of the bay with a light wind. As we get into Saturday, those waves do decrease with those increasing northeast winds getting up to about maybe 3 feet. And you see here by Sunday, and the ocean's going to be getting up to about 5 feet. So those waves do increase with that northeast wind there on Sunday, and notice how the wave action does kind of continue into Monday there. So that concludes our brief for this Thursday, and we will have another briefing, live briefing here on Monday morning.